podcast of Comics, Let's Talk. I'm Kevin Given. I review comic books for two sites, Comic Crusaders and Comics for Sinners. On the Comics for Sinners site, I also have a column called Given to Me. Generally, we talk about my comic book franchise, which I'm kind of on Indie Planet right now, but hope to launch nationally pretty soon. It's Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter. There is a movie in production right now, and I'm showing you a few stills from that movie. There is also an animated trailer I've made. Here's a bit of the animated trailer, which I'm trying to use to sell the concept to, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, somewhere like that. Also, there's a comic book series. You can find free comic books of Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter digitally on Indie Planet and Drive-Thru Comics. Here are some panels from the latest comic book we're working on, Dracula Rising. The first issue was by Dennis Magnant. He has since moved on to another project that he's passionate about. You can find a free issue of the black and white version of Dracula Rising #1 on Indie Planet and Drive-Thru Comics. Now here are some pages from Dracula Rising #2. We're about 4 pages away from finishing that comic book. It will be out very soon by Rodolfo Ezequiel. And now let's discuss comic book movies for 2017. And yes, there will be some spoilers. If you haven't seen all of these movies, then you may not want to watch this broadcast until you've seen them. Now, we're not going to look at films that didn't originate in the field of comic books and do not have a current series, such as the Smurfs movie that's out. Nor are we looking at made-for-television movies, even if they had a limited theatrical run, such as The Inhumans. And let's get started. Spider-Man Homecoming. And it's a huge success. When you consider that this is the third franchise with the character in the past 10 years, rating based on 305 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, Spider-Man Homecoming does whatever a second reboot can, delivering a colorful, fun adventure that fits snugly in the sprawling MCU, without getting bogged down in franchise building. My review, 3.5 stars. With much praise for Michael Keaton, who went from the DC Universe in the first 2 Tim Burton Batman movies to playing Vulture, and also played in the critically acclaimed Birdman. This has him playing 3 flighted creatures of the night cinematically. Then in March came the overlooked Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron. Theron plays a spy in an adaptation of the graphic novel The Coldest City, described protagonist. And that makes it a second hit comic book movie with a female lead. And winding down the year, the last completely successful superhero movie was Thor Ragnarok. This came out in October and is the third Thor standalone film, another amazing success. It has succeeded its predecessors multifold, and as of this writing is still in the top 10 with $843 million worldwide box office. It has a shot at becoming the #3 comic book movie of the year in box office totals. It has already made it to #4. And it's a real fun film. It has taken a cue from the Planet Hulk comic book storyline, and Mark Ruffalo co-stars as the Jolly Green Giant. Cate Blanchett is fantastic as the villain Hel, and even crushes Thor's hammer. The visuals and CGI are fantastic. I had so much fun watching this film that the destruction of Asgard was almost an afterthought, which is one of the film's problems. For such a serious plot, the humor almost seems out of place. Still, I give the film 4.5 stars for never having one dull moment. The biggest weakness is that Anthony Hopkins was wasted. He has no real moment to shine as he did in the other Thor movies. There's one scene where they try, but it's one of the few scenes in the film that doesn't succeed. Rotten Tomatoes reported a 92% approval rating based on 311 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, exciting, funny, and above all fun. Thor Ragnarok is a colorful cosmic adventure that sets a new standards for its franchise. And now, we come to my biggest disappointment of the year, Justice League. I really wanted this movie to succeed. It came out in November with no real competition on either side for several weeks. But DC is trying too hard to compete with the MCU, and it shows. Batman was completely dark in Batman vs. Superman. He isn't a shade of the same Batman. He's delivering one-liners, and nowhere near as dark. In fact, in Batman vs. Superman, we get probably the darkest take on Batman we've ever seen cinematically. Gal Gadot still shines as Wonder Woman, and we get some good nutshell introductions to the characters that don't yet have their own movies. Aquaman is well imagined. The cyborg introduction is the best new character in the film, and the conflict with his father, the brother from another planet's Joe Morton, is incredibly well written and performed. Each character gets their own moment to shine. Ezra Miller's Flash is a decent comic relief, even if he isn't given much funny to do. His reactions are still comedic. Now here's our first real conflict. Fans of the Grant Gustin TV show, which has a viewership of roughly 4 million on the CW every week, are generally upset that Gustin wasn't cast in this role. The producers of the film didn't seem to care what these fans thought, as they simply said, "Ezra's our Flash." I feel that they could have done more to sway the TV Flash fans. How, you ask? They should have had Ezra guest star on the episode of the TV series as the Flash from another dimension. They've already done that with Jay Garrick, who's played by Teddy Sears on the TV show, and it's been done in the comic books since 1961. When the TV Flash guest starred on Supergirl, he didn't know who she was and had to cross dimensions to meet her. This implied that the character was unique to his universe. The Ezra Miller Flash knows who Superman is, and I would assume he also knows who Supergirl is. They're in two different universes, and if Miller had guest starred on Gustin's TV series, it would show some concern on the part of the Justice League producers that they understand how fans of the TV show feel about the situation. It would have given Gustin's Flash a chance to pass the baton and show some camaraderie between the two Flashes. Maybe fans of the TV show would have warmed to Miller and been more likely to show up at the box office, which many of them refused to do. 4 million fans of the show times 10, the average price of a movie ticket, equals $40 million at the box office. There are many problems with this film, including a CGI villain that we can't really relate to. But the plus side is Henry Cavill. His performance in this movie finally leads me to conclude that he is a worthy successor to Christopher Reeve's Superman. With all my criticisms of Man of Steel, which I did enjoy the film by the way, just wasn't the epic that it needed to be. I never held any of my criticism against Cavill personally. He was just doing what the script told him to do. Here we see a Superman that is at home with himself and comfortable with his powers and who he is in the universe. And he's also engaged to the woman that he loves. It's very sad to me that, as of this writing, the Justice League movie is almost out of the top 10 with barely 637 million box office worldwide, which means that it might break even in production and marketing costs. And overall, it's a critical and financial flop. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 41% based on 293 reviews. The site's critical consensus reads, "Justice League leaps over a number of DC movies, but its single bound isn't enough to shed the murky aesthetic, thin characters, and chaotic action that continue to dog the franchise." It's my hope that Zack Snyder is completely out of the DC universe and that they keep trying because they are close to making the epic movie that the first Avengers was. And Warner Brothers, keep Henry Cavill as Superman. And now we come to the last comic book movie of 2017 and what is sure to become the biggest moneymaker of the year. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Incredible. What else can I say? In 9 films, the creative juices are fresher than ever. The fact that they dare to take chances and have different creative teams in each film helps to keep the series fresh. They aren't just retreading what went on before. There's interesting new characters as well as creatures that we've never seen before. There's the obligatory scroll, which is always fun, and then we jump directly into the action. We're not told how the Alliance made a quick comeback after Chapter 7, we simply accept that it has. Star Wars has never been real big on long exposition, thank God. I'm trying not to do spoilers here. Suffice to say that certain characters will rise in rank and certain others will be demoted. Other characters will learn about their abilities and grow up a little bit. Interestingly, there is a gap between the critics and the audience likes on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics give it the film, as of this writing, 93% approval, but only 66% of the fan base liked it. Now this has changed. It has since gone up to 96% on Rotten Tomatoes as of my recording this show. But I think making a Star Wars film with the original cast but no Han Solo and only someone we've never seen before as a supposed friend was a mistake. Want some advice, Disney? Bring back Han and Luke. Unfortunately, they can't bring back Leia again, even though she was scheduled to appear in the next film. We never saw them together in episodes 6 or 8, and I want to see them in action one more time. The story as such is incredibly fun, and like I said, it hits all the beats of a Star Wars movie. The action scenes, special effects, the pacing are some of the most impressive ever filmed. Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, now has some competition for the favor of the Supreme Leader in General Hux, played by Gleason. I must admit right now that I'm not that big of a fan of Adam Driver. Here comes the hate mail. But I just don't think his Kylo Ren is a worthy successor to Darth Vader, even though Vader is technically his grandpa. He seems more whiny than threatening to me. It doesn't affect my liking of the film at all. In fact, the Supreme Leader also chastises him as someone who couldn't beat a young girl who had never picked up a lightsaber in her life. From the movie The Force Awakens. I found that very amusing and dead on to his villainous abilities. If he hadn't killed off his father in a cheap move reminiscent of what might be the lightsaber version of a sucker punch in episode 7, who was one of the most popular characters in the franchise's history, there would have been very little about him to hate. Now there is an interesting scene which makes me like him a little bit more this time around. When he comes up to General Lea's ship, he goes to put his hand on the trigger and then he hesitates. That shows a slight human side to him and compassion for his mother, which he had none for his father. It's almost edible when you think about it. However, the strong points of the film are his mental connection with Rey. The Finn and Rose story is kind of uneven for the most part. They have a certain chemistry, but it's wasted by that subplot's outcome. The film could shave off 20 minutes, and we wouldn't have missed much. And it would have made a tighter, much more enjoyable experience as it drags slightly in the middle. The film's climax relies on a new kind of weapon, and it's seemingly hopeless for the rebels. Will they make it out this time, or will the Alliance prevail? I'm not going to tell you. You will have to watch the film to find out. All I will say is that when they begin to deploy the weapon, it reminds me of the original Star Trek episode The Doomsday Machine. Mark Hamill turns in his best performance ever as the reluctant Jedi that doesn't want to return to the fold, and his reasoning is sound. Watching Rey try to convince him to return without quite knowing how is a good part of the fun in this film. I gave it 3.5 stars. Now, if we compare first and second week openings between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, we see quite a bit of difference. The Force Awakens in its second week made $540 million, compared to The Last Jedi's $365 million. I'm still sure that the film is going to become the biggest seller of the year, as we have some fanboys getting out of school. The younger generation is going to want to see it. I know that's going to happen. But that's still quite a bit of a drop. In fact, it's about 69% of a drop between first and second week box office. Again, my advice, I don't know if anyone will heed it or not, bring back Han and Luke. And that was my take on the comic book movies of 2017. If you agree with me or disagree, let me know in the comments section below. If you like my show, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like the Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter and are more curious about that franchise, go to Facebook and like the Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter page. Until the next show, this is Kevin Given, comic book reviewer for Comics for Sinners and Comic Crusaders. I also have a column on the Comic for Sinners site, which usually discusses my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter series. Please look it up. Let me know what you think. You can get free digital copies of Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter comics on Indie Planet and Drive-Thru Comics. Check it out. You might like it. If you didn't, it was free. Until next week, this is Kevin Gibbons saying, have a good day and keep reading those comics.